Morality is very much a personal choice. It's shaped by society. It's shaped by religious beliefs. But for me, the pardon on his first day of his second term of the January 6th rioters, insurrectionists, was a moral line for me. The oath is to defend the Constitution. That group of people tried to storm the Capitol.
Secretary of Defense is announcing a top military commander who is in charge of the U.S. Southern Command is retiring now unexpectedly. Remember, this is the region, of course, where those escalating attacks against boats in the Caribbean, those boats off the coast of Venezuela that the Trump administration has said have narco-terrorists on board. We're just getting in a statement here from the Admiral, writing in part, "It's been an honor to serve our nation, the American people, and to support and defend the Constitution for more than 37 years."
It's not been so long ago since the admirals and the generals met Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. By the way they conducted themselves, everyone was like that was a silent revolution, and they were not really receptive to everything that these people were saying. A lot of people speculated that this was supposed to be a loyalty test, which we can all agree on because we heard Trump saying that if he finds those that he does not like, he's gonna, fire them. And he also said that whoever doesn't want to listen, whoever doesn't like what I am saying, you are free to get out. But there goes your, future and your career and everything. So that is intimidation. By the way the generals and the admirals conducted themselves, people started saying we are about to see generals resigning. And ladies and gentlemen, it's not been that long until we have started seeing cracks developing in this, in the forces of the US. One of the leaders of, operations in the Caribbean, a black man, Admiral Foster, decided to quit. He was supposed to actually, retire I think a year later or this year, but he decided to quit. Yeah. Another one, I don't know, is it a colonel or someone else, also quit. Because, and for them, they were specific. They're like, they don't like the way Trump is handling things and how he's destroying democracy. And I think when I brought you episodes of them veterans and other active duty people talking about how they are not serving no king, like yesterday was no king's day, I think they really meant it. And I think this is the beginning of these people taking a very serious stand. I want us to look at some of these videos, the reactions of the people. What do they think? Is this making Americans happy? Is this making people concerned? Especially considering that Trump has declared war on Venezuela. Why are these people all now resigning? They are quitting. Are we going to see more people, throwing in the towel? Anyway, let's watch. We'll come back and talk about it. Do me a favor, like the video. Don't forget to share. I'll be back with more.
Some really bad things are going on right now with the Department of Defense, and it's really starting to get concerning. Firstly, this is Admiral Halsey. He is in charge of U.S. forces in the Caribbean, and he just put in retirement. He's set to retire at the end of this year. He's only been in this position for 1 year, and usually admirals are in that position for at least 3 years. So needless to say, this is abrupt and unexpected. We have a post from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth where he congratulates him on his 37-year career and basically wishes him luck in his next endeavor. It's hard not to take this all within the context of what all is going on in his own area of operations. Here we have a report of U.S. forces and Colombians in a strike on a boat in the Caribbean. And even more recently, a Trinidadian family stepped forward and said that their family had been to U.S. forces in the Caribbean. Yesterday, we had B-52 bombers flying near Venezuelan airspace, and that caused Venezuela to deploy fighters to intercept those bombers. But we also got reports that special operations helicopters, here you see a little bird flying around, one of these little guys, was also flying around Venezuelan airspace. And yes, this already comes with the president already approving CIA covert attacks in Venezuela. And again, if it's getting it to the media, I think it's more of a message than anything, but we're probably going to see something as well. And all of this is concerning enough, but we're also accustomed and used to having a lot of insight and transparency within the Pentagon in what they're doing. But that is absolutely not what they have. Here are the organizations that are no longer allowed to report on the Pentagon, and this is the only news agency that is currently allowed to report the Pentagon in addition to several foreign outlets. Needless to say, this is not the level of transparency and clarity that the American people deserve or were promised. And this is coming at a time when we are rearing towards a war with Venezuela, and whether or not that war is justified, I will let you make your own decision. But at the very least, we need to have insight into who is accountable for whenever the military makes mistakes, because that's going to happen in war as well. And at the very least, the American people deserve to know who and why their sons and daughters are going to be sent to go fight and die for their country. So I'll take it to this retirement again. Is he retiring because maybe he's just tired and exhausted of the job? This being his most active and highest role that he's had in his entire career? Or is he retiring because he feels like he just can't stand what is being done and he can no longer follow the orders of the Secretary of Defense? We're no doubt going to get more insight into why exactly this happened in the future, but it's concerning.
Secretary of Defense is announcing a top military commander who is in charge of the U.S. Southern Command is retiring now unexpectedly. Remember, this is the region, of course, where those escalating attacks against boats in the Caribbean, those boats off the coast of Venezuela that the Trump administration has said have narco-terrorists on board. We're just getting in a statement here from the Admiral, writing in part, "It's been an honor to serve our nation, the American people, and to support and defend the Constitution for more than 37 years. Secretary Hegseth says Admiral Alvin Halsey will retire at the end of this year. It's not clear why it's happening now, but it's coming, of course, as the president is stepping up that military campaign in the Caribbean, not just on the boat strikes you're seeing here, but as we reported right here last night with those authorization of the CIA operation inside Venezuela.
So, America has a habit, a history, especially when it comes to black people. America tries to use black faces to cook black people. Like, the AFRICOM is a black general, the guy they're trying to use, General Langley or whatever the fuck name is, they're trying to use to bring down Africa. It's a black man. So this guy is the general in charge of the Caribbean. And he saw what Trump was doing. Trump's starting to blow shit up, and he's the face of it. Nigga said, nope, I'm out. And you know what? The next person is going to be a black guy too. Well, no, not necessarily. Under Pete Hegseth, might be a white guy. But yeah, man, and black man said, I'm out. You ain't about to use my face to kill my people.
The Admirals' revolt against the Trump regime has begun. Utter turmoil and chaos taking place in the United States military right now as yet another top commander has suddenly resigned. This time, the top commander in Latin America, Alvin Halsey, suddenly quit less than 1 year into his tenure as the head of Southern Command, the individual in charge of the United States Navy in Latin America. Apparently, this resignation comes based on his strong opposition to the Trump regime's war crimes taking place off the coast in Venezuela and Colombia, where the Trump regime continued to demand unlawful orders be carried out in the form of blowing up these fishing boats off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia as well. Here's the reporting. 4-star Admiral Alvin Halsey, head of Southern Command, stepping down after less than a year in his position. One of the U.S. officials said that Admiral Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on alleged drug boats. The reporting from CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, and others is as follows. Tensions were simmering between Secretary of Defense, who unlawfully refers to himself as Secretary of War, former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, and Halsey for weeks. Hegseth did not believe that Halsey was moving quickly and aggressively enough to combat drug traffickers in the Caribbean and complained about not being given info he needed about ops per sources. But Southcom, which is what Alvin Halsey, Admiral Halsey led, was concerned about the operations not being lawful. In other words, that war crimes were being committed, and Admiral Halsey did not want to be a part of these war crimes. I can't emphasize enough how unusual a resignation like this is, and I think it demonstrates what I think will soon take place with mass resignations amongst the top admirals and generals. As Phil says, U.S. Admiralty was born after the Civil War. A 4-star admiral quitting mid-operation, the way Halsey just did, is a rupture of that order. Halsey's exit amid lethal Caribbean strikes is a 5-alarm warning. Trump and Hegseth are pushing unlawful orders and driving commanders out. The Admirals' revolt has begun. The Admirals' revolt against the Trump regime has begun.
Morality is very much a personal choice. It's shaped by society. It's shaped by religious beliefs. But for me, the pardon on his first day of his second term of the January 6th rioters, insurrectionists, was a moral line for me. The oath is to defend the Constitution. That group of people tried to storm the Capitol. We're chanting for the death of elected leaders, and we're trying to keep our Congress from performing its constitutional role. So his choice on his inauguration day was first step that week that led me to decide by that Friday I was going to retire from the military this year.
We have some big news this afternoon. The United States military is fighting back against the President of the United States. Today, we learned that Marine Colonel Doug Krugman resigned after 24 years in the United States Marine Corps, citing Donald Trump's contempt for the United States Constitution and the erosion of democratic norms in the United States of America. His resignation coincided with Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth's partisan speeches to military leaders. In a new Washington Post op-ed, Krugman writes that he could no longer serve under a president who, quote, tests how far he can ignore constitutional limits, referring to Donald Trump's use of emergency powers, the federal deployment of the National Guard, and labeling cities like Portland war zones. He further condemned Donald Trump's 2025 pardons of January 6th rioters and his refusal to grant asylum to Afghan allies, calling such actions immoral. Krugman went on to further urge those in the United States military, his former colleagues, to question whether or not Donald Trump's orders, the orders he is giving, are legal and moral, and whether or not they actually have to follow him. That is significant news. He served 24 years in the United States military, and he has resigned. He has left the service. And he likely won't be the last one either. There likely will be more military service members in the coming days and weeks to resign from the force as a result of the Trump administration's policies, as a result of Donald Trump himself. And it comes at a time, it's interesting that he cited Donald Trump's contempt for the United States Constitution. Because just minutes ago, in breaking news updates, John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump under his first term, was indicted by a grand jury in the District of Maryland. Now, Bolton's indictment is not surprising. We knew that it was coming for a long time after FBI essentially raided his home in Greenbelt or in southern Maryland earlier this year. And while now Bolton faces criminal charges associated with the mishandling of classified documents. Now, I know a lot of people don't like John Bolton. He was one of the chief architects behind the failed war in the Middle East, the failed war in Afghanistan and Iraq. But John Bolton is a political opponent of Donald Trump's. This is the third political opponent of Donald Trump's to be indicted in a span of just 3 weeks. You first had former FBI Director James Comey indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia in Alexandria. Then you had Letitia James, the current sitting New York attorney.
2 weeks ago, on September 30th, Colonel Douglas Krugman resigned his post after serving 24 years in the Marine Corps under 4 different presidents. He said he could no longer take an oath to serve under a commander-in-chief who treats the Constitution like a suggestion. Writing, quote, this president acts as though one election makes 236 years of constitutional order irrelevant. Instead of trying to work within the Constitution or to amend it, President Trump is testing how far he can ignore it. If voters and legislators cannot close the gaps in our laws to clarify the limits of presidential power, those who serve our government will continue to struggle. The next president of either party may continue us down this path toward collapse.
Morality is very much a personal choice. It's shaped by society. It's shaped by religious beliefs. But for me, the pardon on his first day of his second term of the January 6th rioters, insurrectionists, was a moral line for me. The oath is to defend the Constitution. That group of people tried to storm the Capitol. We're chanting for the death of elected leaders, and we're trying to keep our Congress from performing its constitutional role. So his choice on his inauguration day was first step that week that led me to decide by that Friday I was going to retire from the military this year.
What about
I resigned from the military because of Trump. That's what full bird Colonel Doug Krugman wrote in the Washington Post and submitted his resignation from the United States Marine Corps after serving on active duty for 24 years. Colonel Krugman wrote that he no longer believed that President Trump was committed to the Constitution. And he also feared being ordered to turn weapons on fellow American citizens. He said he couldn't swear without reservation to follow this commander-in-chief who seemed so willingly to disregard the Constitution. Colonel Krugman claims to have made his decision to retire from the Marine Corps prior to the Secretary of War and President Trump summoning all the top brass to Quantico, Virginia. What Colonel Krugman said pushed him over the edge was President Trump's portrayal of American cities like Portland as war zones.
A Marine colonel with 24 years of service just resigned. Not for money, not for politics, but because he says Donald Trump is pushing the military past its constitutional limits. Colonel Doug Krugman wrote in the Washington Post that he couldn't keep serving under a commander who, in his words, shows disregard for the Constitution. He's urging other service members to think before following any orders that could be illegal or immoral. I'm a military family. Almost everyone in my family has served, so I understand what that oath really means. You swear to protect the Constitution, not a politician. And when someone at the top starts testing that line, good soldiers start asking hard questions. Krugman didn't just quit a job. He gave up a lifetime career to make a statement. That loyalty to the Constitution comes first. That's not rebellion. That is its truest form of patriotism. If you believe in this country and what it's supposed to stand for, then share this. Because if people like him are willing to risk everything, the very least that we can do is pay attention.
Pete Hegseth's purge of the Pentagon is accelerating, and seasoned leaders are walking out faster than the administration can explain why. Just days after Hegseth's now infamous speech to roughly 800 generals and admirals, Admiral Alvin Halsey, commander of United States Southern Command, announced an early retirement less than a year into his assignment. Combatant commanders typically serve 3-year terms, but Halsey will step down by December 2025, citing only, quote, transition timing. Behind the scenes, defense officials describe growing frustration with Hegseth's politicized demands and erratic guidance, particularly his public orders that senior officers must get in line or get out. The speech, pushed as mandatory viewing across the armed forces, marked a turning point. Hegseth told the country's top brass that loyalty to the new vision mattered more than tenure or consensus, and within 2 weeks, resignations began. And this comes after many firings. Halsey's exit follows the abrupt firing of John Harrison, who is the chief of staff to the Secretary of the Navy, earlier this month. Hegseth's office confirmed his dismissal without explanation, a move insiders say was retaliation for his resisting the Secretary's plan to inject partisan appointees into Navy decision chains. Now, these aren't isolated cases. Since Hegseth took control, the Defense Intelligence Agency's director, Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz, was removed in August, joined by Vice Admiral Nancy LaCour of the Navy Reserve, Rear Admiral Milton Jamie Sands of Naval Special Warfare Command, who was in charge of the SEALs, Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield, the U.S. representative to NATO's military committee, and both the Army and Air Force Judge Advocate Generals, Lieutenant General Joseph Berger III and Lieutenant General Charles Plummer. Each was officially dismissed for loss of confidence, a phrase now used so often it's become a punchline among military insiders. What's emerging is a clear pattern. There are purging professionals, installing loyalists, and dismantling independent command culture. Now, Halsey, who is the latest departure, was a 36-year veteran respected for diplomacy and operational discipline, and it shows that even the most balanced officers are finished trying to serve under Trump's politicized Pentagon. His Southern Command has been caught between White House orders for aggressive drug war boat strikes near Venezuela and mounting congressional scrutiny over civilian deaths. Sources close to the command describe Halsey's decision as the breaking point, a refusal to preside over what one aide called photo op militarism. Across the services, a quiet exodus is unfolding. Officers eligible to retire, which is all flag officers, are taking the hint, and those with integrity are refusing to carry out unlawful or reckless directives, even if they are relieved immediately after. The result is a hollowing of experienced leadership precisely when the world is most unstable. Hegseth may call it loyalty, but for the United States military, it looks more like surrender, one officer at a time, and it couldn't come at a worse moment for this current generation.
Every now and then, someone inside the system blinks first. This week, it was Admiral Alvin Halsey, the man in charge of the U.S. Southern Command. And the timing of his resignation is a little suspicious. See, Halsey's job was simple, right? He oversaw U.S. military operations across Central and South America, including the Caribbean. Drug interdictions, regional stability, counterterrorism. It's not a glamorous post, but it's one of the most sensitive in the Navy. And it's one you don't walk away from mid-mission unless something's wrong. See, and over the last few weeks, right, the U.S. military has been involved in a series of deadly confrontations in the Caribbean. 6 small boats destroyed, 27 people unalived. And the Pentagon says they were drug traffickers. But eyewitness reports and at least one set of survivors tell a different story. See, sources say at least one vessel may have been carrying migrants fleeing Venezuela, not smugglers. And that's where it starts to get ugly. See, Admiral Halsey's resignation was announced quietly. There was no ceremony, no long goodbye. Officially, it's a planned retirement, but unofficially, there's some insiders that are whispering about friction inside the chain of command, particularly over the rules of engagement being used in those Caribbean strikes. Now, multiple reports have hinted that Halsey raised concerns that the mission had expanded beyond its original scope and that the civilian casualties were being brushed aside to maintain this administration's strong border narrative. And if that's true, it isn't just a resignation, it's a crack forming inside the command structure itself. See, Halsey is no lightweight. He's a 30-year Navy veteran. He led carrier strike groups, he commanded the USS Macon Island, and served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's earned the kind of credibility that you don't dismiss as political. So when someone like that walks away, you don't ignore it. You always have to ask why, because inside institutions like the Pentagon, a well-timed resignation can speak louder than a press conference ever could. Now, over the next few weeks, keep your eye on three things here. If there are internal communications or after-action reports that surface about these boat strikes, that's your first sign that Halsey's departure was involuntary. His replacement, if they rush to install a hardliner, it means they're closing ranks. And if they stall, it means something's unraveling. Congressional noise, right? If lawmakers start calling for hearings, that means this story has legs. Admiral Alvin Halsey may turn out to be a footnote in a messy chapter, or the first crack in a dam that's been holding back a flood of uncomfortable truths. Either way, I want you to remember him, because sometimes the people who walk away aren't running from something, they're running back towards the truth. And if that's the case, Halsey might just be the chisel that starts breaking this entire thing wide open.
So, saw today that another United States military high-ranking member, this was a colonel in the Marines, he served for 24 years, and he resigned because he says after that whole meeting with the president and Hegseth, he feels that Trump is basically destroying the country, destroying the Constitution, and he no longer wants to serve, obviously, or feels like he can serve in the military and be kind of complicit. And he's urged other members to, understand, that they're here for the Constitution, and etc. And this is like the third or fourth high-ranking military official that's quit, due to this administration. And I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like that's cowardice. At the end of the day, if you quit, they're going to get somebody in there that's going to be a yes man. And I've seen people make comments such as, well, they'll lose their pension, or their money. They'll lose their money. They'll be fired if they don't go along, they'll be fired, and then they'll lose their money. And to that I say, you got to give up something to get something. And the reality is, if all of those people that were in the room, there were a lot of high-ranking non-commissioned and commissioned officers in that room. If they all got together and said, we're not following unlawful orders, then who is he going to fire? Because the reality is, their oath is to the Constitution and to the people of this country, not to the president. So if he is asking them to follow unlawful orders, it's their duty to say, we're not going to do that. And if you have all of these high-ranking officials that stand on business and say, we're not going to follow unlawful orders, do you really think he's going to be able to fire all of them? Do you really think he's going to be able to court-martial all of them? And the reality is, if he does fire all of them, which is impossible, but if he does, they can actually sue, because they took an oath, a legal oath. The articles of the military, the oath, it all says it's to the Constitution, and the articles of the military say that they don't have to follow unlawful orders. So just like all these other people that have been fired by him unlawfully, that sued and got their jobs back, it's the same thing. But the reality is that probably would never happen, because once they stood up here and actually stood on business and said, we're not doing this, more than likely him and Pete Hegseth are going to change their tune. That's just the way it goes. It's just like these news people that said, we're not going to follow your little policies of the Pentagon. Pete Hegseth took all their credentials, but guess what, Pete? Now no one's going to be reporting on what you got going on. So if you want to have your little vanity moment and get on camera, no one's really going to give a damn, because there's nobody going to be there to report on you. Sometimes you have to stand for something to get something. And these people that are in these positions, you have all these men and women in the military that report to you. So you don't think that with your relationship to these people, and these people report to you, if you said we're not following unlawful orders, they would not get in line and follow behind what you're saying, because they have more relationship with you than they have to him. And they know if their commanding officer is saying, this is what we're going to do, and we're not going to follow these unlawful orders, they're going to go along with it. And they can't fire the whole fucking military. So it's time to stand on business. And it really makes sense. It really, not even makes sense, but it really just hits me when I see a lot of people that don't look like me are the ones in the comments saying, well, what about they lose their jobs or this and that? And that is indicative of people who never had to fight for shit. When you never had to fight for nothing, you don't stand on nothing. And things like losing your job or losing are scary for you, because you don't have to stand on nothing. And you never have had to, because you've never had to really fight for a right. When you have people like me, who my mom was born in 1953, and she's the youngest of four. So her and all my aunts lived during the civil rights movement and trying to get civil rights for people. And they were up north, so it was much better than being in the South. But the reality is, I have a parent who lived during this era. It was not that long ago. When you had the bus boycotts, black people didn't ride the bus for a year and walked to work. That is sacrificing to get what you need. My people have done that. We have sacrificed in so many ways to get what we need. Water hosed, beat, arrested, murdered, like that, not walking for a year. And y'all sit here when you never had to fight for nothing and you crying about, well, this military man gonna lose his pension. We ain't going to get nowhere in this country if we don't fight and stand for something. No one is coming to save us. You have to give up something to get something. Crying and going to do protests ain't going to make it happen alone. You have to be willing to fight and give up something. And that's why these military men quitting, it's cowardice. It's cowardice. They should be staying in and fighting and saying, we're not doing this. That is the only way to make change. You saw when they were over here in the soup kitchen lines after not getting paid. Now they're over here trying to, we got to find a way to pay the military. Because they didn't like the optics. It didn't look good. They care about how things look and how people are going to react. And the only way we make change is fighting. And it means giving up something. And if that means these military men have to stay in here, say we're not going to do it and risk possibly getting fired, that's what they need to do. Because at the end of the day, colonels are making $100,000 a year. And that's on only like 2 years of experience. They're making the money. They're not hurting for the paycheck. The colonels and the higher ranking officials are not the ones in the soup kitchen line. They're not the ones hurting. But I guarantee you, if they talk to their service members and said, we're not doing this, those service members that are hurting will stand behind them. Stop quitting. Stand for fucking something for once in your life. Please. Okay? Sometimes you gotta lose something to get something. That is the reality. Take it from black folks who've been doing this since we got here. Okay?
Welcome back to the channel, my people. How are you all doing? Hopefully God has protected you and preserved you very well. Yes, I think this should be a wake-up call. There's something that is brewing and ongoing that maybe the forces are feeling, and other people probably can feel a bit of a shift, but they've really not tested the shift in power. Now, I know that a lot of people are woke and they know that indeed there's been a shift when it comes to the power dynamics. But who would be a better representative of this narrative than the admirals and the generals and the colonels deciding to quit? Which means there are quite a lot of things that are very contradictory to what they signed up for. For the first black admiral, that's a kudos, because this man was literally overseeing, operations over the Caribbeans. We know we have brothers and sisters in the Caribbean. I know you've had quite a lot of opinions from different people, but Issa talked about how they use black faces in black places to make sure that any evil is not labeled white, but rather black. People will literally forget to attack the one that is behind the scene and attack the face that they are seeing, because they think this is the face that has the power to destroy them and, literally finish them. And I think we saw it with Michael Langley, that was supposed to be overseeing the operations in the Sahel region, okay, and sub-Saharan Africa. And I think later on he actually was he fired or something like that? I don't remember. But to the first black admiral, kudos. We appreciate you. You don't even know me. I'm just a little tiny Ugandan woman seated on this channel talking about you. But we appreciate the fact that you decided not to be used against your own people. It takes quite a lot of spine and restraint and bravery to choose not to do what you're being told to do. Because in so many cases, the people that have committed the hugest atrocities always confuse this and make excuses of, I was, following orders from above. Yet you do have morals that you should look at and be like, is this, violating my moral standards? And this exact thing that this admiral did was like, this is against my morals. This is against what I signed up for, and I'm not going to continue to serve this regime. It would be better I leave all of this, because this is an entire career, right? So for someone to literally be like, you know what, I'm not going to be part of this anymore. I mean, that is a kudos, especially with the rumors that we've also started hearing of people that have been attacked and unalived, that are civilians, people that are just on the lakes and on the waters just fishing. and the US starts, attacking them, and then they are putting the propaganda out there that they are, disarming and destroying, DRUG boats, which from the first responders and eyewitnesses, they're like, no, actually, these were civilians. And man, it is so sad that this is going on. Yeah. And then when you look at the situation where Hegseth wanted the press to sell away their rights on reporting about issues of the Pentagon, where the United States military is supposed to be receiving orders and doing stuff, right? People need to know. People need to be moving in the light and in transparency. And it looks like Trump is dragging the entire United States and the West in that direction, because I tell you what, a lot of people love Trump. And a lot of people agree with quite a lot of his nonsensical views, idiotic views. And you will see a lot of people literally throwing away transparency. And that way, you're going to realize that they are going to terrorize the world, just like the US has been doing for generations. This is exactly what Trump is taking US back to. And while other people are supposed to be worried and concerned, you are supposed to be concerned too, because they are creating enemies that are not going to go and destroy the Trump towers. They will come and terrorize normal American citizens. So to see these people, starting a what we saw as a silent revolution, now beginning to actually manifest as a physical one, with the leaders, with the admirals, with these big stars throwing in the towel, it is a good thing. And it is a sign to the Americans that where this state is heading is totally a very different direction that nobody wants it to go to. And that people that have morals are like, we ain't ready to go this, to allow this, because if they go with the orders, that is literally being complicit with whatever that is going on. And I think it takes people that have strong backbones and morals to be like, you know what? Yeah, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the glories. I don't care about the stars and all of that. I'm going to still stand and serve the people, and I'm not going to betray myself and the people. And so for you, my people, those of you that are watching, I think this is a very good sign. I brought you these, episodes, and people were like, nah, they are all complicit with the regime. You have seen. To the black brother, kudos. Thank you for not accepting to be used. And I think a lot of our brothers have also started realizing that we've been used to fight wars that do not belong to us. We literally have quite a lot of blood on our hands, innocent blood, in the name of fighting for wars for billionaires. That it's not about the drugs, it's about the minerals. Because when you ask yourself, what is it? I understand that probably they're like, oh, we are preventing drugs from entering the United States of America and all of that. But with all this force, shouldn't there be probably another thing that they are trying to do just to make sure they enrich themselves? It's related to some minerals. For example, gas, fuel, oil. Yeah? Anywho, I'm just saying because I've seen quite a lot tied into this, but I want you guys to let me know what you think. The silent revolution is manifesting as now a physical one, and you're going to start seeing. And I think kudos to all these people that are like, you know what? And you're about to see more. What do you guys think? Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. From me for today, that's it. I do love all of you. Stay safe and stay alert, because there's quite a lot that is coming. Bye.